Boro suffer a humbling defeat at Elland Road that just adds more clarity to where we are in this league. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and another episode of Project Boro, the Boro reviewing show here on the channel, where we of course look back and analyse every single Boro game. And unfortunately, Boro came away from the best team in the league, in the hardest fixture in the league, at the toughest place in the league, on the back of a 3-1 defeat. And listen, I'm not coming away from this game particularly surprised. I'm not coming away from this game particularly mad. I mean, yep, I'm disappointed. My team's just lost 3-1. But this, for me, just kind of provided more evidence and clarity to something I already knew. And that was that Boro are a very good team. We're a very good playoff side. We're a top 6 side. And on our day, we can beat absolutely anybody. But when it comes to the crunch against a really, really top side in this league, we're just not quite there. We're just not quite good enough. And Leeds showed tonight in many different areas of the pitch, many different positions, in many different, periods within the game, why they are just that little bit better, that little bit quicker, that little bit sharper, with that little bit more quality. Again, a bit like Burnley in midweek, there wasn't a gulf between the two teams. I don't think Boro were absolutely outplayed, absolutely outclassed. I think 3-1's actually a little harsh on us. I think 2-1 would have been a more fair reflection of the result, but it's also absolutely obvious that this is proof as to where Boro are in the league. And this was a Leeds team who, I'm going to be honest, were all right. They weren't at their swashbuckling best. I think especially second half, there was a prolonged period where the game was kind of in the balance, and had Boro been a bit more ruthless, a bit more clinical, a bit more incisive during certain periods, it could have been a different game. But that's the point. Boro would have had to have been absolutely perfect. The final ball at times had to be absolutely perfect, whereas Leeds didn't have to be perfect to beat Boro. They were passive for large parts of the game, but when it came to them big moments, they were able to be that little bit sharper, that little bit better, and that was proven in the second and third goals especially. But let's get into it then, because as I say, Boro come out on the wrong side of a game that maybe could have been different, but I think 7 or 8 times out of 10 Leeds probably win this game, and the Boro 11 was near enough what I expected it to be. There was a slight change in defence with Matt Clark coming in for Fry, who was ill. The rest of the front line was almost as expected, with Latilath starting. However, Riley McGree started instead of Delano Bergzorg. And the worst part of this game was the first 20 minutes. Boro were absolutely awful in the first 20 minutes of this game. And the one thing you've got to do when you're the visiting team at Elland Road is you've got to try and settle. You've got to quieten the crowd, you've got to settle down, you've got to weather the early storm, and we just didn't. We just did not cope at all. And, that's what Leeds do at home. That's what the top teams do at their place, at their fortress. They make it so difficult for you from the get-go. And the first 20 minutes were just hellish for Boro, really. I don't recall us stringing any sort of significant number of passes together. We were really, really poor on the ball, really, really sloppy, and we just couldn't get into the game at all. We were completely out of the game, and it wasn't just down to Boro being poor and not settling, and we did look almost shell-shocked at times, like a rabbit in the headlights. But Leeds made it difficult for us because they were just on it like that from the get-go. They especially pressed with such intensity, such aggression. Our midfielders were given absolutely no time on the ball whatsoever. They made it really difficult for us to get through the thirds, really difficult to get Azaz into the game, give Hackney or Barlasser any kind of time on the ball. And when Leeds did get the ball, they were just incredibly quick, getting it in behind, over the top, playing around us. They were just on a different level for the first 20 minutes. And quite frankly, it was a really, really rough watch for a Boro fan. You're just begging that we'll just survive and get through it and eventually settle into the game and just get our foot on the ball a little bit and get into a rhythm and see where it goes. But unfortunately, we didn't survive, and it only took 15 minutes for Leeds to take the lead. And it was just another rubbish goal, really. And at first, all eyes were on Seny Dieng once again. But honestly, looking back at it, I think the error comes earlier than that. And one big issue, one big area of the team, a big theme of this video is going to be the difference in class between the two teams and the difference in level, I guess. One area of Boro's team that we've always said is just not quite top two are the fullback areas. And that was proven once again because Neto Borges had a nightmare against Dan James in the early stages. And that's what led to the first goal, in my opinion. He kind of commits in midfield. You just can't afford to give Dan James a run on you. And once the ball's played down the right-hand side, he's chasing Dan James, who basically, obviously with his pace, is going to completely outdo him. Gets across from the right-hand side that's got a slight deflection on it by Matt Clark. I can't recall if it was Matteo Joseph or was it Nonto himself who come in off the cross. It's actually a decent save from Seny, I think, initially. Gets himself in the way, gets himself down, makes a decent save. Unfortunately, the ball falls into an area where he can reach it with his leg, but there's not enough time or space for him to shift his body completely from, all his body weight being backwards, essentially, to flipping it forwards and getting any form of head on it or hand or getting his body to smother it. All he can do in that split second is try and get something on it with his leg. And unfortunately, in an attempt to swipe the ball away, he basically kicks it into Nonto and it ricochets into the back of the net. And yeah, it's another ugly minging goal to concede. It's not pretty, it's not nice. Initially, Dieng got quite a bit of stick for it, but I don't think there's much more he can do. I think the issue was down Boro's left-hand side earlier, to which Dan James shouldn't have been allowed to put the cross in like he did. And Boro go 1-0 down, deservedly so. Leeds were absolutely all over us in them early stages. And then Boro settled after that. I thought, a bit like Burnley, we reacted really, really well to the pressure. And I thought we did okay after that. And we didn't really allow Leeds to have that many clear-cut chances. They had a few sort of pop shots that Dieng saved, which you'd expect him to. But Boro started to not get a foothold in the game, but we started to at least be in the game. And there was one big contentious moment first half where it's on the softer side slightly, but I think Boro were unlucky to not get a penalty here, as a cross from the right-hand side came across to Riley McGree, who got in front of Joe Rodon, and it's obvious that Rodon, in an attempt to kick the ball, just kicks the back of Riley McGree's leg. And yep, does he go down? Does it maybe look like he's made the most of it? Possibly, but at the end of the day, Rodon's went for the ball, got none of it, went through McGree, kicked the back of his foot. It's a penalty for me, and I thought Boro were very, very unlucky, given the referee's view, to not get a penalty at 1-0, and maybe the game's levelled up at that point, but it wasn't to be, unfortunately. But that's, a glimmer of what was a pretty poor first half from Boro. Although we sort of weathered the storm, I guess, after they scored, we didn't put them under any significant pressure. We didn't create anything. We didn't really do all that much offensively at that point. And we go into half-time 1-0 down, and I sort of looked at it and thought, we're still in the game, I guess. It's only 1-0, and I did believe if Boro sharpened up in a few areas, there was still going to be chances for us, because in the first half, there were times where we played ourselves into some really good attacking areas, but the final ball just wasn't quite there, whether it was a little bit too short, a little bit too long, whether it was really well read by the Leeds defence, or, a few times Ben Doak got himself on, free down the right-hand side and just couldn't quite find the man that he needed to. I felt like Boro were just one really, really, really good, incisive, deadly final ball away from creating a really big chance and potentially getting ourselves back into the game, because we kept getting in good areas, but again, it comes back to that point. The ball had to be perfect. It had to be absolutely on the money to get through this Leeds rearguard, and it just wasn't, and that's why we couldn't quite get anything of note going in the first half. But as I mentioned, there was always a chance, and there was a glimmer of hope when Boro did get back into the game on the 54th minute. And I thought we started the second half brilliantly. Within 30-40 seconds, we win the ball, we drive forward, we get ourselves up the pitch, win a free kick, I think it was. It was instantly a much more aggressive positive start to the second half from Boro, and I think it's safe to say we kind of got what we deserved with how we started the second half. It was an own goal in the end by, I think, is it Werber? Not too sure if I've butchered that pronunciation, but it was a corner from the left-hand side, in swinging from Dan Barlaser, flicked on at the near post by the fullback, and it gets Boro back into the game. And I thought at that point, okay, we've not been great, but we found a way of getting back into the game, and that's the period to which it was in the balance. You know, the game was there. There was a little bit of a carrot hanging, you know, in front of Boro if we could just grab it. But again, it just never quite fell for us. We just never quite, when I think Leeds were kind of there for the taking. This is the period where I thought they sort of dropped off, got a little bit passive. The game was there for Boro. And this is where, I come back to the levels. That's when a top team, that's when they get in front. You know, when Leeds have dropped off ever so slightly, Boro have got themselves level, and there's a period within the game where there is a chance. The door is opened ajar ever so slightly for Boro to get themselves ahead. We just didn't. And that's where I think there's a difference between where Boro are and where there's a Sheffield United or a Burnley or a top side. In that spell, I feel like they would have got themselves ahead. They would have took advantage of this slight little drop-off from Leeds, and the game could have been different, but Boro never did. There was one real big moment where Hayden Hackney played the ball into Ben Doak, and he just takes a touch. Could he have took it first time, bent it around Meslier with his weaker foot? I don't know, but he takes a touch onto his right, and the goalkeeper comes out to smother and put him off pretty well. But again, we just never created that really glaring goal-scoring opportunity when the game was in the balance. And as the best teams do, unfortunately, they find a way. And as the best teams do, they're proactive. They use their bench. They force the issue. And that's what happened. You know, Daniel Farke made a number of changes. I think it was on the 69th minute. Brought on Joel Perrault. Brought on Solomon. I don't know if it's a coincidence that 5 minutes later, Leeds get themselves in front. And again, this was after a second half where Leeds weren't all that great. I don't think they were creating Boro that many issues. But they forced us into a mistake, and that's what they were doing for a lot of the first half. And unfortunately, as I say, Leeds' 2 goals come from 2 really poor errors by Boro, and there was a warning shot just before this of what was going to happen. You know, we tried playing the ball out, and again, they're just that little bit quicker, that little bit sharper. Their press is absolutely on point. And another area where, you know, I think it's safe to say Boro just aren't quite at the level of top 2 against these sides is in midfield. And again, we were pressed. Leeds nicked the ball. They played it into Dan James. Again, we're left exposed down that left-hand side. Once again, Seny Dieng got down and made an outstanding save to his right-hand side in fairness. And you'd think that was a warning shot that would just sharpen Boro up a little bit, and maybe we'd alter things. Maybe we'd do something differently. But my good buddy Chris, who you guys will remember come on the channel a few weeks ago and will be on the channel in a few weeks, he said to me post-match, and I found this really interesting, it reminded me of Chelsea last season in the Cup at Stamford Bridge, where Boro have a way of playing, and we are very stubborn as to how we continue to play our way. And that's playing out from the back, taking risks, playing through the thirds, keeping the ball down. And I still believe in that. I still believe in, you know, it's a great way of playing, and I think against weaker sides, it's a fantastic way of playing. But a bit like the Chelsea game in the Cup, albeit Chelsea are at a completely different level to Leeds, Boro kept doing the same thing over and over, and even though we kept getting caught, it clearly wasn't working. We clearly weren't doing it well enough. We weren't good enough to keep doing it and get away with it, like in the Chelsea game. Eventually, it caught up with us, and we were punished, and it happened here because, as I say, moments earlier, Dieng had to make a big save. Straight after, it happened again. Once more, Boro trying to play through the thirds. One heavy touch from Riley McGree, and bang, they're on us. They're in behind. Again, it's down that left-hand channel. Borges is committed forward once again. Dan James this time makes no mistake with a brilliant finish across goal right inside the post to make it 2-1. And that was the sucker punch, really. You know, the game was there for Boro to take if we were really, really on it, but we just never were. And what these top teams do is they find a way. And even when they're not playing well, even when they're not at their best, they'll punish you, and when they get an opportunity, they'll take it, and that's what Leeds did. And once it went 2-1, I couldn't see Boro climbing that mountain once again and equalising, because we just weren't creating enough. And the same thing happened again in stoppage time in the 92nd minute. Boro, as we continued to do, tried to play out from the back. Edmondson played a ball down to Conway. Once again, Leeds were that little bit too quick, that little bit too sharp. They read the play, they got in front, won the ball back, counted on us within moments, and before we knew it, the ball was in the back of our net, and the game finishes by 3-1. And as I say, although I think 3-1 was a tad harsh on Boro, I think all in all, it was a fair result with Leeds winning this game. And we've gone up against, as I say, I wasn't bigging them up for no reason in all my previews. You know, they are the best team in the league with the best squad in the league. They brought players on in the 69th minute. They were proactive. They found a way. The top teams do. And as I've said time and time again, there is just an obvious gulf in class between Boro as being a strong playoff outfit, which I still think we are, and the top level championship teams who, when they're not at their best, they go through spells in games where they're not great, they find a way to win, they punish you. And in all the areas of the pitch where we know Boro are just not quite at that level, the difference in quality was clear to see. As I mentioned, they were just that little bit sharper in them key moments. They were just that little bit better. In them big moments when they were in front of goal, they had that little bit more quality. Everything Boro did had to be perfect, whereas Leeds didn't have to be perfect to still beat us tonight. And that's sadly, well, the sad reality of where both teams are. And I'd like to think that's maybe a bit of a humbling defeat, just to remind Boro and some fans who still think we're top two, or we can make top two, or suddenly we've blown this opportunity that we should be top two. I think this shows where we are. You know, we have dropped points this season, a lot of big points. And listen, if we'd not dropped a lot of the big points at home, we still would be hovering in and around the top two, top three maybe. But I think, again, it's over 46 games where I just think it is obvious and clear to see we're just not quite at that level. And I think some fans need to realise that, because they're beating themselves up about it. They're getting really down and devastated about the fact that we're not top two. But for me, that was never on. That was never the expectation. I just want us to be, you know, consolidated comfortably in the playoffs, and that will be my goal and our goal and my hopes and expectations from this moment on. And I hope that's the same for other Boro fans too. But anyway, let's have a look at the team then and some of the performances before we look at the stats. And yeah, you can see Boro were pretty much outclassed in every area across the pitch. You know, Seny Dieng, although the first goal I don't think looks great on him, I thought he actually recovered quite well after that. I thought he made some decent saves throughout the game. The one big one from Dan James at 1-1. Others were comfortable saves that he had to make, but he still made them pretty well. The back line, I think, did okay at times, but struggled. I think Dijksteel, more so on the right-hand side, I think did better to hold his own. Borges, he did struggle up against Dan James, you know, got caught out numerous times. James running in behind. As I say, there were two chances in the second half. One that Dan James took, the other that was well saved, where once Boro turned the ball over and lost it in midfield, you know, we were very exposed at left back, and, you know, 2 goals came from that side, unfortunately. So that was another sort of bit of evidence that, you know, we've got a good playoff solid left-hand side, but it's not good enough when it comes up against these top championship wingers. And I think it is worth saying as well, offensively, we offered nothing going down the left-hand sides. You know, we were all down the right. It was sort of very one-dimensional, and I think that made it a little bit easier for Leeds to defend us. The midfield really struggled as well. I thought Hayden Hackney, for the second game running, struggled a bit. Maybe it's a little bit of a sign as to where he kind of is in the pecking order, again, of being a top championship playoff level, you know, midfielder, but in these big games against these top midfields, that's where he can come a little bit undone. Same with Barlasser. You know, although the goal came from his corner, I thought he struggled in midfield today, and I'm not surprised. I've always sort of said Barlasser's good when he's got time on the ball against teams who will allow him it, but when he's up against top teams who are going to just absolutely press him, and Leeds' press was on it. Absolutely perfect. You know, our midfield got swamped. It got dominated in this game, and our attacking players just never quite clicked, unfortunately. You know, we never got Azaz into the game, really. Again, he was another player who they pressed and marshalled really, really well. I don't think it was the game from McGree. I'm going to be honest. I wanted Bergzorg to start, and I felt that was kind of justified throughout. We didn't keep the ball well enough for McGree to really have an impact, and I would have thought maybe Bergzorg's pace and directness down the left-hand side might have gave us a little bit more joy, gave their defence a little bit more to think about maybe. And that was why Ben Doak was, as always, effective. The thing that let him down today was his final ball, and when he got into some really good areas, and there were times where he was in acres of space so often, where Boro kept finding him really well. We got into them good attacking areas, but again, the final ball just wasn't quite up to standard, and that's why Elath was starved of opportunities, really. He didn't really have much in the game at all, so you can't really judge him too much because he was feeding off scraps, really. And another thing I will bring up, not relating to the performances of the substitutes because Bergzorg and Conway come on, but a reoccurring theme, which I don't want to talk about every week because it's a common theme every week, but I think, Michael Carrick's reactive, whatever the opposite of proactive is, how late he makes changes in games. I think sometimes he can get away with it, but today, 81 minutes before Boro made a change. Again, we're always second to make changes in games against the opposition. Even when teams are beating us, they make changes before we do, and it's not that we haven't got players on the bench who can affect the game, because we do. And maybe when the game was hanging in the balance at 1-1, we could have made a change to maybe force the issue and get our noses in front. But as I say, Leeds made changes in the 69th minute. Was it a coincidence they scored in a matter of minutes later? I don't think so. And again, it's just a sign of levels. Farker recognised that maybe they were a little bit flat, Leeds. The game was in the balance. They needed to get it back in their favour, turn the screw, use the bench, use the quality. They did that, and they put the game away in the final 15 minutes, whereas Boro didn't make a single change until 81 minutes. And what do you expect to happen within 10 minutes? What are you expecting from players with such little time? I really don't know, but yeah, a reoccurring theme from Carrick, and the one big consistent frustration that isn't always pointed out when we win and play well, because why would it be? But it's always highlighted when we don't play well and when we lose, is how late we make changes in games. And I do think it's something that I can't see changing, but I think it's got to at times because, as I say, Leeds decided to change it and go for it. They got their rewards in the end, and I think the stats kind of prove where the game was. Possession was split down the middle. That's fair enough. Two teams who like to play with the football, but you can see by the chances created, Leeds definitely deserved the win on chances and quality of chances. They had 17 shots, only 5 on target, but, from the 5, they scored 3 goals. Again, top side being clinical. Boro only mustered 6 shots and 2 on target, which, against Leeds, if you're going to get a result, you need them 2 shots to go in. As I say, Boro had to be perfect. They weren't. XG, again, massively in Leeds' favour, as well as was pretty much every single metric you could say. And that sort of leads us to the league table, and I think this kind of shows completely 100% where we're at now and why Boro fans need to give up on top 2 if they haven't already. I know there's lots of Boro fans who, have never believed in it, and I just hope that the ones who hopelessly hang on kind of see sense now. But we're 10 points behind Leeds now. 10 points. And that's a team who are playing at 2 points a game. That's a team who are winning every single home game. Boro, to close up a 10-point gap, would have to not only match Leeds' level of form, which, by the way, is automatic promotion form at 2 points a game. Boro would not only have to match that across the final 26 games, we'd have to better it significantly just to close the gap, never mind overtake them. So Leeds have gone. 10 points, gone. They're out of sight. And by this time tomorrow, at the time of recording, Sheffield United could be bang out of sight as well. If they win their game, the gap to them will be 11 points. And if Leeds have gone, Sheffield United have absolutely gone. Again, there's no catching them. The top 2 have gone. Burnley aren't exactly that far behind either. I guess the one joy for Boro is that Sunderland dropped points. They got a very late point, so they've edged Boro by a point, but 6 points to them isn't as unsurmountable, I would say. But we do have to keep an eye on the teams around us, because all of a sudden Blackburn have won 5. They're 3 points ahead and they've got a game in hand. So Blackburn are a team who maybe could be eyeing up Sunderland and solidifying a place in the top 6. Boro have got Watford and West Brom behind them. Watford have 2 games in hand. only 1 point behind West Brom, a game in hand as well. So Borough's place in the top 6 is by no means guaranteed. Still a lot of work to do if we're to get in there. I think we will. We just have to concentrate fully on that now. Listen, Borough's season is not going to be defined by losing to Leeds United. It just isn't. You know, we'd love to get results against these top teams, and we've competed pretty well against most top teams this season, but our season's not going to be defined by this result. We need to ensure we bounce back from it quickly. We need to ensure we react quickly, get back to beating the teams we should beat, get ourselves comfortably in the top 6, because our only chance of promotion this season, quite honestly, is via the playoffs, and that starts at the weekend against Millwall. Plymouth's the week after. And talking of that game, I'll be back later in the week to preview the game against Millwall. That video will probably be dropping on Thursday. But let me know your thoughts, guys, on this game. If you're disappointed, if it's a result you expected, your thoughts on where Boro are at now, and if it's kind of changed anything. You know, for me, it's not changed a damn thing. It's not nice seeing us lose to Leeds 3-1, but it is where it is, and we are where we are, and that's as simple as it is. So like the video if you've enjoyed it, subscribe for much more. As I say, reviews and previews of every Boro game here on the YouTube channel. Hit the bell so you never miss when one drops, and if you want to listen to these videos over on your chosen podcast providers and listen to them on the go, you can do via the links in the description where you can find Project Boro on all your chosen podcast providers. But most importantly, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And until next time, guys, thank you very much for watching. Let's hopefully we can bounce back against Millwall and get back to winning ways at the weekend. I'll see you guys in the next one.